Up next, Authentically Detroit sits down with researcher and policy advocate Amber Hendley to discuss her quest to acquire and reclaim her grandfather's church on Woodward. But first, this week's hot takes from the Detroit Free Press and Bridge Detroit. Detroit judge who had teen handcuffed for sleeping temporarily removed from docket. And Detroit releases 5-year plan to improve homelessness. Keep it locked. Authentically Detroit starts after these messages.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the neighborhood tech hub, and more. Members who are residents of the east side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
Hey, y'all, it's Orlando. We just want to let you know that the views and opinions expressed during this podcast episode are those of the co-hosts and guests and not their sponsoring institutions. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Detroit and the world. Welcome to another episode of Authentically Detroit, broadcasting live from Cass Corridor at the WDET studios. We are content partner to bridgedetroit.com. I'm Orlando Bailey.
And I'm Donna Givens-Davidson.
Thank you for listening in and supporting our efforts to build a platform of authentic voices for real people in the city of Detroit. We want you to like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platforms. Happy Monday. Today, we are joined by accomplished researcher and policy advocate Amber S. Hendley, who is here to discuss her mission to reclaim the church once led by her grandfather, Gary M. Douglas Jr., Abyssinia Interdenominational Church on Woodward Avenue. Amber, welcome to Authentically Detroit.
Thank you, y'all. Happy to be here.
Glad you are here. How is the blessed day finding you? Donna, how are you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was good. I was a little bit under the weather, so I missed a couple of things, but it was a good weekend still. Kevin and I celebrated our 4th anniversary. And
4 years.
4 whole years, right?
Happy anniversary. But
you know what? Today is the anniversary of the day that an armed gunman drove his truck into our facility.
Today the 19th?
Today, August 19th. It was a Saturday last year.
It was a Saturday. I was in New York City, in Brooklyn.
And at noon he did that. And really, I thought destroyed or really trampled on my dreams. I'm just happy to say that the dreams were not destroyed. We're okay.
That's right.
And we have new doors coming soon. And we're going to be reopening. So that part is really exciting. Other than that, I was standing in the gas station, putting gas in my car on the way here, and I felt a little chilly. So I don't know. I think fall is in the air.
Oh, man. I had to have a jacket over the weekend and today. Amber, how are you today?
I'm wonderful because I did feel that fall weather, which is my favorite season. It's been a little too hot for me.
Y'all can have
I grew up in the South, and so that's why I'm up here.
Where in the South did you grow up?
So I'm from Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, wow.
So between Statesboro, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, and Tampa, Florida. And it's hot and humid. And this summer has been reminding me of home too much. so I'm like, dang, I hope it. I'm sorry, y'all. I know.
I love a Detroit summer. Let me tell you, you ain't never gonna hear me complain about Detroit summers ever.
I thought this weekend was really muggy, and I didn't like that. And I'm not a super hot weather person. I'm an 80 degree with a breeze person at most. Okay, I don't really like the high.
Yeah, well, it was muggy because of the rain. It was like that high pressure mixed with the low pressure.
That mugginess though, I never feel good in mugginess.
It takes the energy out of you. You got to breathe through it. How was my weekend? My weekend was blackety black and black. Let me tell you that. I started the weekend off judging the collard green competition. Shout out to Kyrie Frazier. Detroit is different than all the partners over there. Chef Buddha from last year retained his championship. Oh man, but it was so much fun being on stage, getting the opportunity to taste everybody's collard green and cornbread combo.
Wow.
I was not upset. I had the best time. It was so great. So many people showed up to the Joseph Walker Williams Rec Center on Rosa Parks. It was just great. And I think, that I just love that gathering. I love gathering around our mutual love for collard greens. It's sort of like that. The affirmation is like, oh my God, did we all grow up the same?
Is this an annual thing? I'm new to Detroit.
It's an annual thing. It's the second annual collard green
love
cook-off.
it.
So last year was the first one. This thing has taken off, especially with media hits. Kyrie gets so many media hits around this because it's such a great and fun time. And everybody, from your elders to your middle-aged folks down to your young people and children, everybody was there and having a good time, including Jalen. I saw Jay, ran into Jalen there, and some more folks.
That's wonderful.
I also had the opportunity to go to Afro Nation. I saw Cash Dow, y'all, and all of that. It was so much fun to see. Okay, because we know that different festivals have their own festival attire, and it was so much fun to see Black folks from across the diaspora. Because I can't tell you how many people who were here that were not from here, but so many Black folks flew in for this, which was really, really cool. But to see everybody just dressed and however they interpreted the dress code and being in love. I saw people on dates. I saw people with family and friends. I saw parents with their children. I saw friend groups just linking together and taking group photos, from the food trucks to the performances to the vibes. Everything was so lovely. I had the best time. Donna Givens Davidson.
I had tickets for Saturday.
Yeah.
And my health did not let me make it. But believe me, I was really disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lil Wayne couldn't show up because his flight got grounded in New York. So he was the headliner for Sunday night. But Party Next Door made it. And Party Next Door rocked out. It was a great time.
I heard that
if you love Afro beats.
Last performer was really good anyway. So even though it wasn't Wayne, and that's what some people came for.
Some people came for that, but
yeah,
it was a good time. And so shout out to Smade and Josh and all the Afro Nation folks. Right. Shout out to Tia for bringing them here on Authentically Detroit. Right. We have to have them back next year. I enjoyed that interview a few weeks ago. It was a great
interview. If you didn't listen to it and you went to the festival, check out the interview to explain its origins. I think the origins really were exciting.
Yeah.
And what really always makes me excited is knowing Detroit is on the map, right?
Yeah.
That this is the only U.S. site for the festival so far. Now, they're probably going to take it in other places, but they were here first.
Yeah. And shout out to Otto at Bedrock, who was the champion and within Bedrock to bring it here. So shout out to everybody. Listen, it's time for Hot Takes, where we run down some of the week's top headlines in the city of Detroit. For Hot Takes, Detroit judge who had teen handcuffed for sleeping temporarily removed from dock. This is by Dave Boucher at the Detroit Free Press. A Detroit judge who had a teen girl handcuffed and threatened her with jail time for sleeping in his court and giving him attitude has been removed temporarily from his docket in order to undergo training, according to a statement from Chief Judge in the district. 36th District Court Chief Judge William McConaughey said after the court conducted a swift and thorough internal investigation, it determined fellow 36th District Court Judge Kenneth King failed to live up to the standard of the court. Here's the quote. The 36th District Court, known as the People's Court, remains deeply committed to providing access to justice in an environment free from intimidation or disrespect. The actions of Judge King on August 13th do not reflect this commitment, McConaughey said in a statement Thursday afternoon. McConaughey did not say how long King would be removed from his docket. The judicial schedule courts use to determine which cases a judge will hear. He described the training as necessary training to address the underlying issues that contributed to this incident. Eva Goodman, 15, attended King's Court earlier this week with a nonprofit on a field trip. In between hearings, King's addressed Goodman and her peers. At one point, he appears to see her fall asleep, shouting at her. Eventually, he has her detained. She was eventually released, but until she was forced to wear a green gel jumpsuit, had her hands cuffed. I'm sorry, I am having a hard time getting through this because this is just ridiculous. Had her hands cuffed in front of her and pleaded for forgiveness. Goodman's mother, Latoria Till, told the Free Press on Thursday morning her daughter was likely tired because the family currently does not have a permanent place to stay. They did not go to bed until late Wednesday night. She has retained a lawyer. King told the Free Press on Wednesday he acted appropriately. His quote says, "I wasn't trying to punish the young lady. What I was trying to do was I was trying to serve as a deterrent," King said in a phone interview Wednesday afternoon. "I wanted to instill in this kid that this is not a joke. This is a very, very serious situation." Donna, what say you?
Ooh-wee. I have so many things I need to say. Let me start with this. When he says he wasn't trying to punish her, he was trying to serve as a deterrent, not a deterrent, whatever. I hope that he does not feel punished, but deterred from doing this again. So that's the first thing I want to say. It's a complete violation of her human rights. She was not there on trial or even in a mock trial. She was on there in a visit to his courtroom, and he singled her out, not because of anything she said, but because he didn't like what he perceived of as her attitude. It's what abusers do, right? Abusers will get mad at you for, for not showing adequate deference to their authority. And it's what people used to do when they enslaved people, right? Show me the right kind of attitude. Show me the right kind. Don't you give me any lip. It's that kind of power dynamic that makes me so angry. As importantly, so many people think that scared straight in those narratives are what poor, Black, traumatized children need to have more often. It's almost as though living in poverty is not traumatic enough for so many of our children living in concentrated poverty, dealing with homelessness in the community, crime, abandonment, blight, and this feeling of being second-class citizens in America is not enough for Black kids because people always want to pile on more. Somebody needs to teach us a lesson. The lesson is never love. The lesson is always harsh and punitive, that we want children to know how to be more obedient. We want children to know how power can just wipe them out as if they're not born knowing that. You know, when a kid gets in trouble, we say things like, yeah, that's why they need to bring they need to bring punishment back, or it is corporal punishment back. They used to be able to beat kids in school. That's the problem in schools right now, is we're not beating kids. And we live in a nation where that's the dynamic for Black kids, and it's never white kids who are being taught these lessons. And so it is when we carry out racist actions and racist policies, even when we are Black, we are instruments of racism. And I don't trust the man. And also, this is not the first time he's done this. He berated there's a video that surfaced where he berated a Black woman who was in his court. I guess he was trying to serve as a deterrence to her as well. I have no respect for him. I don't really have much respect for people who defend his behavior. Hands off my kids anyway, and any kids I know. I think we need to give our children in Detroit and other places more love.
You know, this story has infuriated me in more ways than not, and I got to speak to the fragility of this man's ego and manhood to the point where he felt like he needed to berate, cuff, and put in a jumpsuit a 16-year-old baby. This is a child. This is a baby. And your ego and your Black robe syndrome power was so transgressed that you felt captivated enough to put this young girl through that. First off, being sleepy in any setting is not a crime, number one. And number two, so many people cannot help it. I don't want to be sleepy. First off, and then nobody's really talking about nobody's really talking about that. This was the Greening of Detroit. This was the Greening of Detroit's field trip to 36th District Court. I'm trying to understand what kind of learning that they were trying to expose the young people to, first of all. But secondly, if there are other adults, including staff from the Greening of Detroit, there to advocate and to show and expose their young people to the 36th District Court, for them somehow to, I haven't heard any reports of them stepping in and shielding this young lady from this kind of traumatic experience. I haven't heard anybody step in on part of the Greening of Detroit to say our staff, nothing. There was no protection. There was no protection for this little black girl. And I am tired of our little black girls being unprotected by the systems that claim that they're supportive and supposed to protect them.
And how about this, by black men? How about this? It was a black man who did this. You are so right, because you already know I don't know how to act in certain circumstances. And I know you don't. I would have been, they would have had a film of me. He would have had to arrest me possibly, because there's no way that's okay. It makes you want to cry. I absolutely agree with everything that you said, Orlando. It is the abuse of power, it's the fragility of ego, but it's also possible here. I don't talk about this, but I had a situation almost 30 years ago in 36th District Court where a judge in very different circumstances abused power when I was there for a visit. This idea that I am God inside this courtroom is part of the problem. You are not God. Only God can judge, but you are not God. You are literally over there to ensure a fair proceeding and the application of law. You are not there to exercise power. And if you think that's your job, then it shouldn't be your job anymore. And Orlando, you and I have talked about the need for us today, like who some of these people are sitting in these courts.
Beating this drum for at least 3 years now. Who are these people? Because here, this situation proves my thesis. And it is this, that young people in the city of Detroit are more likely to come before a judge and a bench than they are to meet their mayor, their city council president, their governor, lieutenant governor, what have you. And oftentimes when they come before these benches, they have economic implications for their income and their families. They have freedom implications. This man threatened to make her spend a couple nights in jail. I don't know who you think you are, sir, but punitive measures for a black little girl being sleepy in a non-court proceeding need not apply here. This man has been released from his post at Wayne State University. Yay. He has been set down by Judge McConaughey at 36th District. Let's see the same kind of punitive measures that he wanted to visit on this young lady, visited onto him. This infuriates me in more ways than I am actually able to communicate. And shame on any adult, especially black men, who did not step in and protect that baby from that man.
He needs a deterrence.
He needs a deterrence.
And a punishment.
I mean, and standing flat-footed on Fox 2, Local 4. Do you know he had the audacity and unmitigated gall to say, I want to mentor this woman's mother, this baby's mother needs to retain a lawyer. She needs and take her for everything he's got. I am so infuriated by this.
I will be part of the campaign when he runs again. I believe many of them I don't know if they run next year. But when we need to figure out when the judicial cycle is. And, if you're like me, you hit the voting booth the day of voting. You forgot to look up the judges before. And you're like, is this a black name? Maybe so. I'm not sure. But as obviously clear, choosing black judges does not mean that you are protecting your children. We actually need to choose people who have progressive beliefs around criminal justice, because the criminal justice system is inherently flawed. Mm-hmm. Let's be real clear. The criminal justice system is inherently racist in the way it's structured. We don't have enough defense attorneys. The way police and prosecutors sometimes collaborate to make decisions, the way that sentencing happens.
Not sometimes, all the time.
Yes, all of the time. Don't let me understate it. We already have those things. And so what we're looking for in judges should be not somebody who will uphold the system as it is, but somebody who actually wants to make the system as fair as humanly possible. And there have been judges who have done that in the past. This is not one of them, and he needs to go. And I'm not afraid to say that.
I'm not afraid to say it either. And I know I'm giving my opinion, which I normally never do but this is egregious. Victoria Byrne Harris, if you're listening, come on, we want to talk to you about this. But the other thing that I want to say to anybody who has the opportunity and privilege to work with and speak to our prized young people of the city of Detroit. I started my career in youth development. If a child is sleeping, there is a way to handle a sleeping child. Most of the time, if I'm up giving instruction and the child is sleeping, I will go and gently tap them and tell them to take a walk and go get a drink of water. I'm not offended. I'm not mad. I don't feel disrespected because I have no idea what's going on in the life of that young person. I would always find out. You know why? Because you can't apply discipline when you have not first applied love. And my love for our young people made me want to just dig a little deeper.
Sometimes they need discipline. Sometimes they need sanctuary. Sometimes they need medical care. Sometimes they need psychiatric care. You don't know what a young person needs, but to assume that when young people fall asleep, it's a disciplinary. Do you know how many young people have slept through my conversations? We have these little group meetings and one person is nodding off and I just keep on going. My ego's not involved. I don't think it's because I'm boring them, although maybe I am. I usually think it's because of what is happening with them. There is one young lady in particular who used to always fall asleep. She used to be associated with Vulture Youth Voices. I'm not going to name her here, but what I found out was that she had just lost a sibling. She had gone through a lot of grief, and sleeping sometimes is a way that some people have of processing grief and loss. And keep in mind, in our community, when kids lose things and lose people, they don't always get to take a day off. There's no bereavement time. There's no social worker or grief counseling they're receiving. They're just expected to pick it up and just go to school the next day. You never know. And also, when young people don't have a place to live, it's more than just not having a regular place to live. It's the conflict and trauma of living in somebody else's space who really doesn't want you there. Okay. Sometimes the adults argue there's not enough space. Sometimes the kids are mad that you're there. You're not in a healthy, loved environment.
You can't rest.
You can't rest. And so we know a lot of times you're not sleeping on a bed. Sometimes you're sleeping on the floor. A lot of times there's all of the relationship dynamics that go on. And you and I know too many young kids are couch surfing every single day of the week because their parents cannot provide and or they choose not to stay in a place every single night with their parents. You don't have to know that to be a judge. But what you do have to know as a judge, although you probably should know that since you are judging people, you should understand something about their human and lived conditions in our city, since most of the people coming before you have some connection to all of these, community trends. But when you're a human being and you care about people, you also don't have to punish without cause. Her cause, she never spoke back to him. She slept and then she woke up. And when she woke up, he didn't like what he perceived of as her attitude. And facial expressions can look like attitude when people are in pain, when people are sad.
This is ridiculous.
It's so ridiculous and it's so unprofessional. And yet he's getting supported by some people. And keep in mind, we wouldn't know he did this if he wasn't proud about it and didn't brag about it
proud.
And share that video so he could show people how he put this girl in her place. So, yeah.
Sorry, excuse for a man. Listen, we're going to talk about the 5-year plan to improve homelessness after this break. Keep it locked.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Founded in 2021, the Stoudemire is a membership-based community recreation and wellness center centrally located on the east side of Detroit. Membership in the Stoudemire is available on a sliding scale for up to $20 per year or 20 hours of volunteer time. The Stoudemire offers art, dance, and fitness classes, community meetings and events, resource fairs, pop-up events, the Neighborhood Tech Hub, and more. Members who are residents of the East Side have access to exclusive services in the Wellness Network. Join today and live well, play well, be well. Visit ecndetroit.org.
Welcome back to Authentically Detroit. Detroit released its 5-year plan to improve homelessness. This is by Nusrat Rahman from Bridge Detroit. How Detroit helps its homeless population is getting an overhaul over the next 5 years as the city looks to boost services, increase the number of available emergency shelter beds, and better provide support. The need goes well beyond the people. So many drivers pass on main roads and above freeways or who they see tucked on street corners. More than 1,500 people face homelessness on a given night in Detroit, Hamtramck, and Highland Park. Among them, roughly 200 people were unsheltered, living in places not meant for human habitation, out on the streets or in cars and abandoned buildings. Over the course of the year, however, more than 8,500 people experienced homelessness and about 1,000 were households with kids. At the same time, the city's homelessness system itself is squeezed. To fully meet the need of people estimated to experience homelessness in Detroit a year, the system needs to add at least 275 emergency shelter beds and 870 units of permanent supportive housing. That's according to a 5-year plan the city of Detroit and its partners, including the Homeless Action Network of Detroit and the Detroit Continuum of Care, released on Thursday. The 119-page plan, developed over a year, is meant to serve as a roadmap to improve Detroit's homelessness response system, which includes shelters and housing programs. That looks like improving shelter facilities, bulking up the housing supply, and reducing the number of people sleeping outdoors, among other areas of focus. The detailed plan focuses on 8 areas of improvement. Number 1, increasing the supply of affordable housing, engaging with landlords, and funding new permanent supportive housing. Number 2, reducing unsheltered street homelessness by ramping up street outreach teams. Number 3, improving the quality of shelter facilities and case management. Number 4, continuing to improve existing systems and programs. Number 5, increasing wages and benefits of staff in homeless service organizations. Number 6, advocating for more federal, state, and local dollars to improve homelessness services and housing programs. Number 7, creating a more just and equitable system by looking at the experiences of people with disabilities, LGBTQ plus groups, and survivors of domestic violence, while also supporting professional growth within the system. And lastly, developing committees and strategies to implement the improvements laid out in the plan. Donna, what say you?
It's a good start. Certainly the way we serve people who are homeless is significant, and putting more resources and more professionalism into that is important. But prevention, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. How did these people become homeless in the first place? We're still talking about permanent supportive housing, which is really targeting people who have some level of behavioral health or lack of functioning, and providing them with shelter. Some people are homeless because they cannot afford housing. And housing affordability has become a big problem. The city does not have a housing affordability plan at all. Right now, people can get a Section 8 certificate, and they have something like 60 days to find. Well, if you go into emergency shelters, you can get
an
immediate certificate, and you have 60 days to find housing from people who will accept your certificate. And many people can't find housing because we are not building up our supply. Or that meets
Section 8 standards.
Well, that meets the standards and or will accept the certificates, because there are many landlords who simply don't want certain types of voucher holders. And so I think really looking at the housing system more comprehensively, and looking at the connections between housing affordability and homelessness is super important. We're not as conscious of that in the city because our housing crisis is not as extreme as what we're seeing in California. But if you look at what they're seeing in California, I mean, if anybody's been to, it's a crisis. And one of the reasons why it's a crisis, you can work a full-time job and still be homeless there. Well, you can work a full-time minimum wage job in Detroit and still not be able to afford housing.
Hello. Check out the Affording Detroit series at outliermedia.org.
Oh, come on.
Shameless plug.
It's not shameless. We need to plug it, and people need to know, right?
Yes.
And so I think that it's a good start. I'm glad to see that the systems of care are engaged in those conversations.
Absolutely.
I would really love if we could connect those systems of care with housing providers and affordable housing developers, and we could look at a comprehensive system to ensure that we are helping to protect the human right to shelter that all people have. And I'll say human right to housing that all people have, right to reliable shelter that, you have some control over. So whatever that looks like, we're not really moving in that direction yet.
Yeah, a couple of things. What I'm hearing you say is that humanity is required, right? We have to approach this from a humane perspective, but also being comprehensive around addressing root causes that are symptomatic of what we see in the streets. But I would also say, I think the face or whatever visualization that comes up for you when we talk about the homeless population, I want to challenge that visualization, because sometimes it looks like that young lady in 36th District Court. Sometimes it looks like your cousin who just got evicted and is sleeping in a car and showering at LA Fitness or Planet Fitness, right? It's not always the person on the street standing by the freeway with the sign, right? Homelessness looks like a young person couch surfing from home to home, coming to Vaulted Youth Voices or the Vault Teen Center every single day because that was his home before he had to go to wherever it was he was going. I want us to challenge the narrative and notions and visualizations that we have been taught to believe about the homeless population and really do a better job at humanizing this crisis. This is your brother. This is your sister. This is your auntie. This is your cousin.
We still think about homeless people the way we used to. These are people who want to live in the street. They don't want housing. They are dysfunctional, all kinds of things. We don't think about homelessness as a consequence of social breakdown.
And a cause of dysfunction, too.
Dysfunction.
I'm dysfunctional. I'm homeless.
Well, if you really wanted to solve the problems of crime, if you really wanted to solve the problems of kids attending school on time, people keeping jobs, when the city had an initiative, I don't even remember the name of the initiative. It was a comprehensive initiative that was started a couple years ago. That was designed to provide all of these social supports to people to get them into employment. I wish I could remember what the name of it was. But what I remember was the biggest obstacle to getting people into employment was housing. And this is a citywide program. And so I'm talking to the director, and they had resources for everything but housing. It's as though we don't want to talk about the thing that is the most expensive thing, but long term, the social costs are so much higher than the cost of providing housing. That when you do an economic, and I know that we have a wonderful guest in front of us, and I really want to invite you to weigh in, Amber, because this is something that you study.
It is. And so one of my thoughts around, so obviously I believe it's just the right thing to do, but sometimes I think we have to frame it in a way that makes sense to everybody. And if, just like what you said, the harms and what you do to mitigate whatever these bad homeless people are doing or whatever issues that homeless people are causing that you got to pay this money for or this, that, and the other, you pay this tax to feel safe from them, so on and so forth. It just makes more sense economically for GDP, for the city. It's less resources put in to fixing whatever homeless people or these bad homeless people are doing to invest in them, making them whole. Then you don't got to worry about whatever your vision is of this bad homeless person, not the right vision, which is it could look like anybody, but just in your mind, picture all of the homeless people being these bad homeless people. That's what you want a queue line that you don't want to be next to, and so on and so forth. Then think about that investment in in housing this person. How is that going to just make your selfish commute a little bit better? If this person has home and food, they're not going to be whatever nuisance you're making in your mind that they're going to be. So I just always like to frame it in different ways for different people, because it's the right thing to do is to do this. Yeah. But if you can't get on board with that truth, well, then just think about the dollars and cents of what we do to keep them out of space and to make it harder for them, or how they make us feel, or whatever the case may be. That's a lot of money and resources that you're putting into that.
And then
it's more.
And then you have jail sentences. Yep. And then you have juvenile detention. And then you have the mental health costs.
People
and you
going
have
to jail because they poor.
You have the failure to produce a workforce cost. Yep. And you have the inability to attract business costs. There's so many costs that are economically salient to decision makers. I really don't want to weigh into the possibility that these are horrible people. And the reason I don't is because that's what people already believe. I really do want to weigh into the possibility that these are people just like you who didn't have the kind of support you had. These are foster care children who never had parents who were taking care of them, who had to go into a third-party system that didn't prepare them for adulthood, going to schools that did not prepare them for the future, and now they are 2 steps from living on the street. The other thing I want to talk about is the number of people in Detroit who are living in housing that is so inadequate that when the roof caves in, they might be homeless too. Not because of choice, but because they don't have the ability to maintain adequate housing. And you know, when we talk about the 1,500, I don't think we've ever counted the number of people who are doubling up in somebody else's home,
that part,
who are not considered homeless, formerly have never been declared homeless, but are living with somebody who does not want them there.
The way that the research is done is there's a street team sent out every year to sort of collect these numbers. The other thing that I'll say is this, y'all, and I really want us to think about it. So many of us in the city of Detroit are one paycheck away, one hospital visit away, one car accident away from the same fate. This is a crisis.
It is. It is. You know, listen, when I was growing up, and over the years, as I've had my own situations, domestic violence being one of them, right? I had an uncle who took me in. My uncle had a 5-bedroom house. I could stay with him with my 3 little kids, and I didn't have to worry about eating or having shelter, right? All through my life, I've had these people, whenever I've been in crisis, to think, if I was ever in crisis, where would I go? And there were always places that had adequate space and heat and, you know, food for me to be there. Now, I'm not a person who likes asking for help, so understand that it's not something I enjoy doing, but in the back of my head, I've known that. This year, I lost my uncle, and I realized the significance of losing the person who I always in the back of my head knew would take care of me if nobody else did. What a privilege to have an uncle or an aunt or a sister or a brother who you know will always be there. And don't get me wrong, I still have people in my life who would take care of me if I was in that situation. But a lot of people don't. It's a privilege to have those resources. And when you look at the stripping of Black wealth in the city of Detroit through the foreclosure crises that have taken place, now you have a whole nother thing because Big Mama doesn't have a house anymore. All right. Big Mama's living in a studio apartment or she's living in a studio apartment. And so when we think about even, you know, people talk about generational wealth, and I know we're going to talk about housing in a minute with you or actually wealth gaps. But I look at generational well-being as being as significant as generational wealth, if not more significant. And it's that well-being that we've lost.
That is really great framing because, you know, well-being is what we ought to strive for, not just wealth, right?
Yeah,
we
that's
want to be well because it's all inclusive.
Yes.
It's all inclusive.
And to be wealthy does not mean to be well either, right?
And, and I think we shortchange the conversation when we just talk about wealth and not our well-being, our overall well-being, don't you think?
I think not only do we shortchange it, I think it's dishonest.
Yeah.
I think that very few Black people got wealthy off of housing, okay?
That's
not what we're doing. We're going to have that conversation, but the way that the housing system is set up, redlining, banks lending, you know, appraisal values, all of that limit our ability to get wealthy. And that's okay, right? Because as long as you had that house, you had safety and you had protection. It's not for me generational wealth that I don't even, you know, I'm not a wealth person, right? I think that wealth is one of those things that is very individualistic and it does not really, you can't have collective wealth in the way that you can have collective well-being. And because I believe in sustainability and I support the kind of just causes that means everybody's doing well enough, that means that you can't have these big, huge gaps between incomes that exist in our society right now. But that's a different conversation. I want to make sure that we have that with you, Amber, because I know this is what you studied. This is your specialty. In addition to your story about your grandfather, this is something that you've really focused on.
Yeah, so we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with Amber Hendley. Keep it locked.
Bridge Detroit is your news and engagement platform that is telling the stories of Detroiters rooted by community priorities. Started in 2020 by Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Stephen Henderson, the newsroom has already established its footing as the go-to source for hyper-local perspectives that ask the hard questions, brings accountability, and searches out real solutions. It's free to become a member of this award-winning news organization. Visit bridgedetroit.com today to sign up to receive the news delivered right to your inbox. Bridge Detroit, by Detroiters, for Detroiters.
Have you always dreamed of being on the airwaves? Well, the Detroit Eastside Engaged Podcast Network, or DEEP for short, is here to make that dream a reality. Located inside the Stoudemire, the DEEP Network offers studio space and production staff to help get your podcast idea off the ground. Doesn't take a whole lot of work to get started. Just visit the Authentically Detroit page at ecn-detroit.org or call Sarah at 313-948-0344.
Welcome back to Authentically Detroit, everybody. Amber Hendley is an accomplished researcher and policy advocate known for her work in fair lending, wealth creation, and financial systems reform, particularly focusing on Black outcomes. In a former role as director of research at Woodstock Institute, she committed to democratizing data and research, ensuring its accessibility and relevance to the community. During her childhood, Amber and her mother resided in Detroit alongside her grandfather, Gary M. Douglas Jr., the inaugural and only Black pastor in the history of the Abyssinia Interdenominational Church, where they actively participated in the life of the church. For the past 4 years, she's been actively engaged in Detroit with the intention to reconnect with former church members and have meetings with local developers, leaders, lenders, and city officials to gain insight into the needs of the area from the perspective of its native residents. The culmination of her personal and professional experiences, coupled with the extensive research she's conducted in community development and the significance of preserving African American legacy in Durham and Chicago over the past 6 years, brought Amber back home to Detroit to revive her family's legacy in a meaningful way. What a just cause that brought you back here. Amber, let's talk about this conversation that we were just having around wealth creation and generational well-being. Donna, you were framing a question before we went to break.
Yes, I was just asking Amber about, your research into this, but I don't want to go straight to that. Tell me about your history, what brings you to Detroit, and how that connects to all of this, because it's a generational story, right?
It is.
Okay, so you can just share your generational story.
Yeah, well, I guess it all starts in my birthplace, Savannah, Georgia, which I connect my home, my birthplace, to reparations work. So that's kind of what led me to this type of work. I feel like what I want to do and what the work that I've finished my graduate program has been focused around ways for us to get our reparations. And in the absence of the formal plan that needs to take place, how do we piece it together to kind of make more sense? But I started out, like I said, in Georgia. I was a high school math teacher, and I intentionally only taught in Title I schools, which mean it's a high number of free or reduced lunch, which in America translates to Black or brown most oftentimes. And in these schools, I was teaching high school math. I wanted to use math to transform lives and to, we need more of us in STEM, and we need more of us to think about sustainability and how we need more of us to have these analytic skills to create the future. And also, that can help you self-determine a lot more if you have these skills. So I thought that that's what my place was to be in the classroom, I taught high school, like I said, helping young Black minds transform. And as I got close to my students, their narrative was similar in terms of, yes, we hear you, we think that it's accessible, but there seems to be a glass ceiling. My cousin is smart as I don't know what, and we can't seem to get it right. So Trump got elected, which fueled me even more to figure out, how do I help these babies? So I decided to go back to grad school, focusing in economics and political science, because I thought that was something that we as a people could understand a little bit more. And I just am innately an educator. That's who I come from. My grandmothers, my great-grandmothers, all educators. And so I'm like, if I get this understanding, that's how I can do the most good, economics and political science. And in my program, I was fortunate to study under Dr. Sandy Darity, who's a reparations scholar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All 4 semesters.
I know the work.
Wasn't in his class, I was TAing for him or doing an independent study. So I really just did nestle under him because in economics, I agree with you completely. It's not about the money or the wealth. It's about like holistic freedom, and like my lived experience should be robust and free. And but as an economist, you have to pick something with a dollar sign on it. So I obviously gravitated towards wealth versus income, wealth inequality. And that's how I ended up coming to the reparations space and the reparations framework. And like I said, like nestling myself under Dr. Darity.
Amazing. I got to interview him during the pandemic for Urban Consulate.
I mean,
wow.
Yes, and it was such a blessing to be trained under him. And in my second semester with him, I took an entire reparations seminar. And we could present whatever we wanted. It could be a video, a documentary, paper, whatever, a dance performance if we decided. And I chose to write a speculative fiction, reframing my family's narrative, given 40 acres and a mule, because it happened in my birthplace. My people are from Georgia. My people are from Bullitt County, Chatham County. And so I started to do that work, tracing my lineage back through slavery from my mother's father's side.
What did you find?
In terms of?
Tracing your lineage, what did you find? What did you discover?
Well, fortunately, we knew the people, but I was able to get my one ancestor on the now I'm forgetting the name of the plantation, but it was her father's plantation. We didn't find that out until some DNA stuff later down the line. But she was born on her father's plantation, never knew it was her father. My 6th great grandmother, Harriet.
So when she didn't know it was her father.
She didn't know it was her father.
Can you be more precise on why not?
He never told her. Like
he was the master.
He was.
Okay.
He was.
I was trying to.
Yes, he was. He was the master.
He enslaved her.
He enslaved her, and her mother was a slave.
Her mother was enslaved.
Yes.
And so then he
fathered her.
He fathered her,
and so she never knew that was her father, but was then sold to her sister. Well, to her brother, and then ended up being sold to her sister. And Harriet, in her lifetime, actually never knew this, and neither did her child, who was my 5th great grandfather, Isaac. He didn't know either. It wasn't until like Ancestry DNA came, and we traced our lineage and did the match that we were able to determine that was her father. This came like in my generation. So Harriet never knew. My great grandparents never knew. My granddaddy never knew. Who she came from.
So upon emancipation, were you all, was your family ever deeded any land, or you all didn't get any land?
We did we bought land.
You bought land.
We purchased land. Okay. We weren't deeded land, but we did purchase land.
You did purchase land, gotcha.
Yeah, once people were deeded land, they just took it back,
They took it right back, yeah.
So
they did.
Took it back.
For reparations, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ooh, fascinating.
So that work. Then I went to Chicago that summer, and reparations is my framework. Contract selling happened. Like that was maybe potentially the birthplace of that. I know that happens here. We can talk about that as well. But I quantified what was extracted through that process in Chicago to Chicago's Black community, which was roughly $4 billion for just one generation being extracted. And that brought me back to the region, and I kind of hopped around organizing.
In your research in Chicago, did you come across the book Family Properties by
Burl? So Burl she worked with us directly on it. She's writing a book right now, actually, to talk a little bit more.
Fancy.
But so the contract buyers league, her father being Mark Satter, that the book is centered around. Our research team was led by Jack McNamara, who was the lead organizer of the Contract Buyers League that she talks about. So a lot of stuff in her book, Jack McNamara helped her inform, as well as her research of the archival documents that we reviewed. So whatever she reviewed for her book, she pointed us to those documents from the court case, and we were able to pull addresses, and we built a database which had never been done before, of the contract homes, how much they cost, what the markups were. That's how we were able to quantify.
So, the thing about her book, and I don't want to get off topic, but when you bring about Chicago and contract buying, I was actually led to this book by a Jewish woman I know who said, you have to read this book. And I did. And so Beryl Satter's father was a Jewish attorney who represented black home purchasers, right? But a lot of the people who were selling these contract homes were also Jewish people who excommunicated him or who cut him off and really turned against him, right? And also in this book, Martin Luther King moved to Chicago and said he had never experienced racism like he experienced there. And I think it's really interesting, not because I'm trying to target race relations or ethnic relations, but when you hear people saying, you know what, Jewish people were fighting for civil rights and they were fighting, yes, some were and some weren't. I think our histories are so much more complex. And in Chicago, here is this movement of dispossession that was, being carried out by people whose descendants now believe they were always on the right side of history. But Beryl Satter is actually a person who was willing and brave enough to bring that out. Did she face backlash for that? I'm just curious.
I'm sure she did, but we never talked about it. But I'm sure she did. And interesting what you're pointing out, this neighborhood that this all happened was North Lawndale. And that's where Martin Luther King Jr. stayed. He stayed in a home. The organization that I organized with owns that building. So that we like that's been immortalized, his stay there. But this same neighborhood was the neighborhood that he visited. The Contract Buyers League neighborhood was where Martin Luther King Jr. stayed. And that community area was Jewish until FHA mortgages were accessible to them, and they moved north into the suburbs and just left it or sold quickly to a speculator of Jewish descent.
Yeah, who then, and I think, I think when we look back in history, there's people alive today who say, nobody is alive today who ever participated in that. And it's like, well, that ain't true. And, if not the direct descendants, nobody acknowledges
the woman who lied on Emmett Till just died last year, 2 years ago? Come on now.
But and there's so many historical examples that if we're going to have reparations and a real reckoning, then we have to acknowledge sort of the commonplace exploitation of black home buyers and black bodies that transcended, race. And there were black people who also engaged in these practices that sort of transcended race and ethnicity, and quit acting like it's just the Southern folks who did the wrong thing, because it's all the way up here. Now let's fast forward to Detroit and your connection to the city of Detroit.
So the same.
You grew up in the church house like me.
I did. The same lineage that I traced back. And the reason why it was easy is because I knew a lot of it. It wasn't something that was foreign, so it was easy to fact check. And because I knew my people, I was fortunate to have both sets of my great grandparents on my mother's side until I was in high school that I could ask questions and talk to. And so my mother's father, who was my granddaddy Gary, in the 70s, he came up here. And he became the pastor of what was then Woodward Avenue Presbyterian Church, built in 1911. And it is a historic building. And his name is on that in the U.S. Archives. But he came up here in the 70s. We were still down in Georgia. Well, I wasn't here yet. I was coming. But my mom was, she stayed, and my grandmother and everybody stayed back in Georgia, in Savannah particularly. And once I was born, my mother went with my father in overseas. He was in the military, but she had a baby. When you got an armed baby, you don't want to be without family. So she came back to the States until he was stationed back. And we stayed in Detroit with my grandfather until I was about 3. And so we were actively a part of that church. And then my parents had a tradition of sending me off to either Savannah, Statesboro every summer so they could be a happy married couple, or sending me to Detroit, and I would come here and spend time with my grandfather at the church, obviously at the church, because that was his home.
Now, where did he actually live?
My grandfather, 7 Mile and Woodward.
Okay,
he was Palmer Woods.
Yeah,
he was over there. I remember we used to think it was really cool because John Sally had a home there.
Yes, I know.
And so when I was little, I thought that was the coolest thing. Yeah. John Sally used to live around here. Yep.
Actually, that house is vacant. That house needs a lot of work.
John Sally's.
It was an archdiocese owned the house.
And then didn't Charles Ellis? One of the
yes,
bishops.
Bishop Ellis owned it. There was actually,
or was it Wayne T. Jackson?
It was Wayne T.
Yeah,
it was Wayne T.
Sorry, Chucky. We love you, Chucky Ellis. It was Wayne T. Jackson.
Yes, you know, I'm not going to say anything because people love him and go to his church. But anyway, I have some lawyers. But yes, it was that. What street were you on?
Strathcona.
Okay.
And I remember when the Jacksons, that's the summer that I would go, and I played with Brandon, and they had a trampoline in the backyard. And I remember that summer I used to have it was really cool hanging out.
So what is your mission now concerning the church and your grandfather?
Oh, that is what people have been asking me. So one, I want to reclaim it. So I found out that he was actually deeded the church and he owned it when he died. I did not know that. Every time I came back to Detroit, I would always stop by the old house and stop by the church every time. And that was last time was in 2019. Then I did it again November of last year. I presented at an economic conference on reparations, and I stopped by the house, and that was that. And I stopped by the church, and it was just something about just where I've grown and the work that I've done made me want to just purchase this. And that's what I thought it was just I just want to buy. I got to figure out how to buy this church and do something with it, because every time I've come here, it's been vacant. And all anybody can say is how beautiful it is. And I see its beauty, and I remember what it meant to the family. And so as I started to do research, that's when I found out that he was deeded the church. He owned that church outright. And when it was Woodward Avenue Presbyterian, he was the first Black pastor ever hired there. But when he got deeded it, he changed it to Abyssinia Interdenominational.
And when did he pass?
In 2004.
In 2004. And the family did not know that he owned the church.
The family did know.
Okay.
I didn't know.
You didn't know. Okay.
But this is something, a lot of the work I do around too is how homeownership, just like you said, for Black folk has not been a wealth building opportunity. It has not. It's been a struggle. And so part of the work is how we have our estate planned. We don't have the loose ends because we don't know about the process, and we lose properties. And that's what happened with this church. My grandfather died too young, and I'm sure he didn't think he was going to die. He didn't have it.
How old was he when he passed away?
I might be making this up. I think he was in his 60s. My grandfather was not old when he died.
Right.
He was not old.
60 is definitely not old.
No, it's not. He was not that was young, you know? Okay.
I turned 60 last year, so I had to make that joke.
It's definitely not.
No.
And my uncle was still living here. My mom and I had moved to Florida with my dad, but he didn't have his stuff done correctly, and the church went to his ex-wife, and she sold it. We didn't want to sell it. My uncle actually fought her and lost a lot of money in the process because he wanted that church. And I know my grandfather wanted us to have that church, but he didn't tie up his loose ends. He didn't make sure that he had protected the legacy.
A man of a certain generation.
Yeah. Bless his heart. And I ain't even mad at him.
Bless his heart.
But at the end of the day, we did lose that to my step grandmother. And like I said, we put up a fight. And I didn't know about any of this. This was all new to me because, Black Southern families don't really talk like they should about certain traumatic things, especially economics.
You ain't lying.
And so it was my digging and then prompting and then asking, and then it's confirmed from my uncle and my mother.
So who owns the church now?
A developer named Greg Cheesewright.
Okay, and you sent a message to Council President Mary Sheffield saying what?
That I wanted, at this point I was still in Chicago, but I was letting her know that I was planning to relocate here, which I did 3 months ago, to reclaim this church and develop it for community use. However that looks, that's what I want to understand is what does that neighborhood want there? There's the co-op that's right across the street, and I love that co-op, and I love Malik. I love his work. I followed him for a very long time, and it's an opportunity to activate this space, Black-led, possibly all cooperatively owned, because I do a lot of work around wealth creation, but doesn't mean that I buy into the concept of wealth. It is an American construct, so I operate within that framework to help people understand. Because again, I try to think about the frameworks that can do the most good. But at the end of the day, I'm going to push, like, I'm values driven. And so I think that, and I've had a conversation with him, with Baba Malik, about when I get this church back, to honor the spirit of cooperative. And so that's what I'm here to do, is reclaim it. I want to hear, I want to listen, and I see myself more so as a project manager. It is a heavy lift to do some type of development like this.
It sure is.
And I'm built to, like, I'm patient enough. I've got the background. I've got the supports to then, like, to be the agent for the community. Like, what do y'all see? It's a massive space. I don't know what shape it's in.
Yeah, it's a just cause. Have you spoken with the developer? Have you been able to see the space, access it?
No. So I did reach out to him as well. And I never heard back from him. So no, I have not.
Okay. Yeah. How long has this particular developer owned it?
It hasn't even been a year.
And do we know how much he paid for it?
I don't remember, but that is public record.
I know. That's why I asked.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this is very fascinating to me, right? Because I know that there are so many younger folks like you, like me, who are curious about who they are and where they come from and are fighting for legacy. And sometimes it's in the form of something physical like this. We want you to keep us in the loop. Are you recording this process? Are you doing like a pod? I mean, are you documenting this in any way? Because you are resolute in that this will be something, and I believe it's going to happen because you said so. So I want to know if you are, how are you documenting this for those coming up after you who are going to be curious, just like you?
I'm not. So maybe you're just saying that
I'm going to see
be.
that. I'm going to see that. And Maliki Kini will tell you the same thing if I know him, and I think I do, that you should be documenting this process.
A couple of thoughts I have. One is connecting with nearby community development organizations that have a stake in that area. Community development organizations exist to bring people together and to help facilitate people driven change. Some are better than others, but all of us have the same core philosophy. The other one is that to connect with other developers in the community. I don't know if you've heard of the READ Association.
I haven't heard of that.
It's an association of real estate developers in Detroit. Orlando and I will be having dinner with the vice chair or vice president of READ in
tonight.
About 20 minutes. But I encourage you to connect with them. And then also I'm wondering, before we break, what is your take on the Reparations Task Force, and have you been at all involved in their work?
Not in the city. I have in Chicago. So I'm just... Yeah,
I can definitely connect you with our friend Edith Ford, who is on the Reparations Task Force and is very passionate about this issue, because I think your scholarship may be useful to them in some ways, especially because you mentored under such a giant in the field. It just makes sense to me.
There's nobody better.
Yeah, so I think as you are moving through this space, it does make sense for you to connect with people who are rooted in this space, because it's that rootedness that can help get you access to some of the resources and people that you need to drive your vision forward. But I'm excited about your vision.
Amber, welcome home.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story. We can't wait to hear more. We're going to keep in touch.
Thank y'all.
All right. If you have topics that you want discussed on Authentically Detroit, you can email us at authenticallydetroit@gmail.com, or you can hit us up on our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Authentically Detroit. It is time for shout outs. Donna, do you have any shout outs?
I do.
Yeah.
I'd like to shout out the Honorable Alberta Tinsley Talabi for her 70th
Happy birthday!
She turned 70.
Happy birthday.
She had a birthday party yesterday that I missed because I was under the weather.
Yeah.
But I do want to honor her for everything that she has contributed to our community in so many ways.
A giant.
Just a giant. And she's an interesting person, too, because she is one of the few people I know who lives in the home that she was born in.
Yeah.
And she stayed rooted
over there
to
in
the
Pennsylvania,
community.
baby.
Stayed rooted to the community, stayed real through sitting on city council to being a state rep. I believe she was also a state senator. She has been involved in leadership in our community, and also through founding the Amac Alive, and as well as the billboard. She really fought against alcohol and tobacco on billboards in our community and won that fight to reduce the the concentration of alcohol and tobacco on billboards. So she is a giant in our community. Somebody I absolutely love, a board member for ECN, relatively new board member. I just want to shout you out.
But she shows up, and I got to give the Honorable Alberta Tinsley Talabi her flowers as well. Fellow Eastsider, she was a good friend. I've known her my entire life. Actually, she was a really good friend of my grandfather, the late Reverend Dr. William Holly, over at New Rising Star Missionary Baptist Church. Alberta was always there because it's right along Mack Avenue, and that was her. That Mack Avenue is where it's at. Amber, you have any shout outs?
To my cousin Brittany. This is her granddaddy too, and her granddaddy's church is
all right,
my cousin Gary.
Hey,
Gary,
cousins.
Brittany, little Carly. Love y'all.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. Start a podcast or something.
Okay.
All right, do it. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. Remember to love on somebody and allow yourself to be loved on. Peace.